Okay. Well, welcome. It is the St. Louis Writers Guild's author series. We're here for October. We're here tonight with two authors, and this is our new book spotlight. So we do this every so often, once or twice a year or so. We like to focus on St. Louis Writers Guild members who have new books out and new books coming out, so we can showcase them and let you guys know kind of what's going on in St. Louis's literary scene. So we're excited to have tonight with us Fedora Amos, who is with me here, and then Denise Elam Dauw, who will be talking about they'll be both talking about their books. They have two radically different books. We couldn't have had two different books. We'll get into why in a minute here in a second. But I would, before we get started here, like to thank All on the Same Page Bookstore for hosting us. We do love being here. We're here on the third Thursday of every month. So look for us, come on down, and join us. Or, if you are so interested, join us online if you're a St. Louis Writers Guild member. If you're joining us online, feel free to text your questions in, say hi, or let us know, and we'll pass those along. And if you are also so inclined, you can let us know on Twitter at STL Writers Guild. So enjoy that way. Tonight we have Fedora Amos, as I said, who won the Maven Fiction Prize for her Victorian whodunit, Jack the Ripper in St. Louis. She dons corset and hoop skirts to perform as real historical people and imagined characters from the 1800s. Fedora loves live theater, travel, plants, and cooking. She has one son, Skimmer, who partners Fedora in writing science fiction and fantasy. Why do I write? I love words. Always have. Reading them, writing them. I even like looking them up in the dictionary. So call me eccentric, call me crazy, but call me a writer. You can find more about Fedora at fedoraamos.com, and that'll be in a link below here. And her latest book, and I say latest because she's published several mysteries, is, as I said, Jack the Ripper in St. Louis. Well, I'm going to tout it as much as I can. All right. Denise Elam Dauw is a music educator in West St. Louis, Missouri. She holds an MM in music education from the University of Missouri, St. Louis, and a BM in music education from the Millikan University in Decatur, Illinois. Specializing in instrumental music as band director, Miss Elam Dauw also has experience teaching choir, orchestra, piano, music history, and appreciation, guitar, jazz band, marching band, and color guard. She is currently a member of the St. Louis Writers Guild, the National Association for Music Educators, and volunteers for the St. Louis chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. And you can find more about her at DeniseElamDaw.com, and that has hashtags in the middle, or dashes in the middle of them. And that link will also appear with this video. So, your book is If Music Be the... excuse me, I apologize.
Okay,
If Music Be the Food of Love. And we'll talk more about that book in just a second. I'd like to start off with you, Fedora. So when you tell us a little bit about your novel, Jack the Ripper in St. Louis.
Well, I'd be delighted to do that. But first, I want to disabuse you of what poor Brad just said. No, I haven't published tons of other mysteries. Really? This is my first fiction. I am published. Fiction. That's right. I am published in nonfiction, in educational materials, which absolutely nobody wants to read.
Okay,
so I'm hoping that people will be happy to read this one. It's set in 1897 St. Louis, and I love pop culture of any time, but especially historical pop culture. And I found an interesting factoid that the real Jack the Ripper may have died in St. Louis in 1903. And I thought, well, there's got to be a story there.
There's definitely a story.
And so I researched Jack the Ripper, and the truth is, I actually believe that Francis J. Tumblety was the real Jack the Ripper.
Okay. Well, that's exciting. So we will talk more about your book in a bit, but I wanted to give Denise a chance to talk about her book.
My novel is a romantic historical fiction novel. It takes place in the 40s and around St. Louis, in the 60s and in the 90s and in current day. It's a story about three women, May, Jean, and Ellie, who are all ailing, and they're visited by someone you're not sure who it is, but of paramount significance, and they tell their story of how they met their true love through music and how it opened up gateways to lucidity and brought them true love, and everything that falls in between is quite an adventure, and they're all so it crosses multiple generations of time, but it's about how music can bring about true love and how it can bring you back, if only for a moment.
Excellent. Well, that's exciting. And we're going to get much more into these books here as we go on through the night. But I do want to start off asking a couple of questions here. So, Fedora, what kind of research? Obviously, you found out that there was this Jack the Ripper. Did you kind of dive into that?
I did.
And how did you find that?
Well, you'd be amazed at the information online. One of the links that I have is to Ripperology Casebook. People across the world are interested in Jack the Ripper. And they have a whole series of possible suspects to be Jack the Ripper. Some of them are completely outlandish. I mean, Lewis Carroll, come on. You may as well say it was Queen Victoria, and somebody probably
I was partial
would
to
think
her,
that.
what was it, her nephew? I was partial to that theory for a while.
They had him hidden away and pent up. He couldn't possibly have done it. Well, at any rate, I read tons of stuff online and various books, and certainly I read Patricia Cornwell's book, in which she says it was Walter Sickert. Well, Walter Sickert was a sick puppy, but he did not kill those women in 1888 London. It just wasn't him. But she had a lot of researchers to pay, so I'm sure that explains why she had to name somebody that nobody else thought was the Ripper. At any rate, my character, the one that I believe was the real Jack the Ripper, was a quack doctor named Francis J. Tumblety. And if you go to the Ripperology list, you'll find him always in the top 3.
Okay.
Because he was one of the chief suspects at the time. But he ran away to France, just evading the London police. But you know, they had somebody follow him from France as he took an assumed name, Frank Townsend, went to New York, and they followed him there. Okay. Now, do you think they would do that if they didn't believe him a real suspect?
No, probably not.
They couldn't extradite him because the only reason why he had been arrested twice in London was for gross indecency. And you may even know what that means.
Yes.
They thought he was a homosexual. Well, they lost him in New York and in South America, and he traveled then from Baltimore to New Orleans to St. Louis to Rochester and spent a lot of time here, and he died here.
Okay. Well, that's exciting. That's a nice little bit of local trivia. So in doing this and going through, I take it you obviously studied this man's life a lot, seeing how his travels went. Did you go through all the Ripper case files and, you know, research the actual murders themselves, or did you go past that so you didn't have to deal with that gory stuff?
Well, first of all, there aren't any original materials.
Okay.
4 years, just 4 years after the Ripper murders, they closed the files, and then lo and behold, they simply disappeared. So that whatever is known about Jack the Ripper actually came in second or third hand. It was from local newspapers. It was from the recollections of various policemen who'd been involved. Nobody has any legitimate papers still on the case.
Yeah.
So, isn't it wonderful? Anybody can speculate as much as he or she wants to, and I'm right in there doing that.
I like it. I like that a lot. All right. Now, to Denise, I'm kind of curious if you could talk about how you mixed music in with your story.
Yes. Well,
obviously, it's in your background.
Right. Yes, you write about what you know. My story is actually, it was propelled by, my story was inspired by real events. 3.5 years ago, my grandmother passed away from Alzheimer's, and unfortunately that's a growing epidemic right now. And for my students who are going to be encountering this baby boomer generation of people going through this, I wanted them to have something commercial to access, which is why I have discussion questions in the back of my book and how to get involved, and just general information on myths and untruths about the disease. But about 3.5 years ago, I went and I visited my grandmother in the hospital, and she was totally unresponsive I tried to touch her and just verbally speak with her to just try and, get some kind of response. And nothing was working. Several minutes had passed, and she had pneumonia and was suffering from an infected bed sore, so nothing was working. And then I thought, what could I do? What more can I do? And so I started to sing to her a little bit of Dreamland, Judy Garland's Dreamland, which I was raised on the Andrews Sisters and Danny Kaye and Bing Crosby, and so there's a connection here of this rare upbringing that I felt like it was meant to be. And as soon as I started singing, she started to turn her head, gradually open her eyes, and then she tried to mumble the words a little bit. And for someone who had been suffering for 9 years from this disease, that doesn't happen. So I poured myself, at that point it was just a huge epiphany for me. In all my years of music education and all my training, I never thought anything like that could be such a profoundly huge response. So I poured myself into research. I spent an entire summer with books and got to know why. And I came to find out that the medial prefrontal cortex is the last part affected by Alzheimer's. But when familiar music is present, it can also connect them with their memories, their autobiographical information. And so with this information, it just validated everything I do every day, teaching kids and teaching music. And I knew it was my calling, but this kind of hit me out of the blue. I need to do something. Alzheimer's is just one of those things that it's not going to go away, at least right now, anytime in the future, and it's going to triple in the next 25 years, the number of people affected. So this book was a pull from her life, an inspiration of her life and how music was a part of it and how she always took care of people. She was a nurse in the U.S. Cadet Corps, then went to labor and delivery over here at St. Mary's, and then finally as a nurse in a school situation. And so it was a way for me to kind of pay it forward and also get the message out as well. So I talked with the leading neurologist in St. Louis, and we live in a wonderful place for research in Alzheimer's right now. So I literally sat down with a couple of the top neurologists in the country and validated my plot line. And so it's not just the 40s, it's not just the 60s and 90s, but it does shoot at the heart of getting really in depth with these women's lives. It's not all about Alzheimer's. It is romance. It's a love story. It's how it's all intertwined, and it kind of hits you square in the eye. Just seeing the reality of what that disease can do, but also what power music can have when it's there and present. So it was a great, almost out of body kind of experience to just be having that calling and just to have that moment with my grandmother and to have that just propel me. And so that's why I just got involved with the Alzheimer's Association, and they've been so supportive of the book, and a portion of each book goes to them.
Oh, wow,
so,
excellent. That's very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Well, you really got to bear all your expertise then down on
a little bit.
One book. That's kind of nice. Excellent. Moving on to that, actually, let's since this is for writers out there, mostly we'll be talking to writers. We do have a few questions that I'd love to throw out at you guys. So, this is actually going to go out to both of you. So when you do write, do you have a process when you write? Do you sit down every day and hammer it out, or do you just find the time when you can?
Yes.
Yes. I like that answer.
I do. When I roll out of bed in the morning, I do not do anything else but go to my computer, plunk my bottom in the chair, and turn the sucker on.
Okay.
And something comes. I don't know why. Perhaps it's because it's the last thing on my mind when I go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. I like that. Mm-hmm. So do you use an outline and stuff, or do you just go and see how the words flow through you?
Well, it's not quite either of those.
Okay, well, how
I have a starting place. If I didn't have a starting place, like Jack the Ripper died in St. Louis, or another starting place, like both Buffalo Bill Cody and his Wild West show and Scott Joplin both being in Sedalia on the same day.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
In 1898. So it's something like that.
Okay.
Okay, there's a story here.
Yeah.
Move from there. I like
I visualize the black moment. The time when people are out there saying, well, how the heck they gonna get out of this? And from there, I kind of work my way around to it and think of suspects and how they really could be the one.
Okay.
The one thing I think I can't do is decide who the suspect is too early, or I think I would just get tired of the whole thing and quit.
All right. Well, Denise, what's your process? Do you find time? Or?
Yes. For this particular novel, it was the overarching umbrella of the climax. Like, I could see it so vividly. And so from there, I just kind of worked on the timeline and the outline in general. And my first outline was 17 pages. And from there, it just expanded in certain chunks. It grew in different parts of the book because you go from part 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. And so the process for me was just the overarching, let me figure out ultimately where I'm going, and then start on part 1 and spend a couple months in the 40s, then a couple months in this. So Google was my very best friend, but so was the library. And also talking to people, talking to tons of people, obviously, for this novel. But the process for me was mostly, I think, my voice, and it just propelled everything from that point on. And I think for me, as soon as I find the first line of my paragraph, the first sentence, it just goes from there.
Okay.
So that's the overarching process for me.
Excellent. So let me ask you this. The outline, that 17-page outline, if we look at the book and look at the outline, is it the same or a lot of changes in there?
Not a lot of changes.
Excellent.
I mean, it actually had a pinpointed direction, and I pretty much see where it's going, and I just stick with it.
Okay.
It didn't really weave or wane too much.
Oh, that's good. That's excellent.
It was easy for me in that regard.
All right, so let me ask you guys, both of you actually. So what is hardest for you then? Plotting, the dialogue, setting, or characters? Do you have any preferences? We'll start with you, Denise.
I think the setting for me, I'm such a vivid. I could see it so vividly.
Okay.
I can feel it so viscerally. Just it's all right there and very tangible in my mind. So the setting and the dialogue flows from that, and so that's easy. I think the plotting, because it literally took me a couple of months. Once I found my umbrella, once I found that pinpointed direction, it was from there. It was a fairly easy experience.
Okay.
So plotting, I would say.
Excellent. So what about you, Fedora?
Well, dialogue comes to me pretty easily.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't think I have a problem with that. As for plotting, that's the part that I love, because it's a challenge, and because I never know quite where it's going, and so it's always exciting to work on the plot. So while I have problems with it, I find it the part that really makes me go ahead with it also. So that leaves setting, really. And I have a big tendency to be quite verbose, which my critique partner is always telling me, don't use all this description. And so I don't know how much description to use is my real problem with setting. How much is too much? How much is not enough? What are they not going to read?
I do that with clothing. Like, they don't really need to know exactly what color it is. Let them figure it out. That's a hard thing to do.
So, and I keep asking myself what Elmore Leonard would do, and he's not answering.
Excellent. I like that. So, and to that end, when you choose to write, the question is, when you chose the point of view you chose, whether it be first or third or any of that, what made you choose that choice? And did you enjoy it? Did you run with it? Did it flip back and forth or anything?
It did.
Okay.
For me, I had a really hard time, because I feel like when you're in first person, it's so grabbable, and you're in that person's mind. But with third person, it also has its own challenges, because you can see everything, and I wanted everybody to see that perspective, but also be in their mind. It's really hard. I finally chose third person because you are going to be going from part 1, but I did go back and forth and back and forth, and I changed it, and I read it, and then I changed it back, and I read it again. I'm like, I don't know. It took me a long time to to figure it out once I started really diving into that outline and expanding it. So.
What about you, Fedora?
I have trouble making first-person work.
Okay.
I've done some short stories, and I think that's about as much as I can maintain it. I can't do it through a
Nothing
whole
wrong
novel.
with that. No, that's why I like to throw that question out there, because I'm really curious about the answer. It seems to be something a lot of authors flip back and forth on, or very much set on. So I do enjoy that. So let me ask you, Fedora, what did inspire you to write, and not just this book, but in general as a writer?
It's something that I always wanted to do, and as I said, I published in nonfiction. That was because people actually asked me to write, so they must have thought I was good enough to do it. And I sort of took that, as flattery.
I like it.
But also, I always admired writing. Mark Twain is my idol.
Okay. Good.
And I have no aspirations of achieving anything like what he did. But, gee, at least I can have a pen name. That's a start.
I like it. Excellent. Well, Denise, let me ask you then. So, obviously, the book has some musical influences. So, do you listen to music while you were writing the book?
I did.
Okay. The music of the book, or music?
Well, yeah, a little. Well, obviously, I had to do a lot of research because in the third part of the book, you're actually following a college music educator major. So it took me back to when I was in college and reminded me what I was listening to was so much classical repertoire, and I focused a lot on piano literature at that point, and so it was a lot of fun to. In one of the pinnacle pieces in the entire work is Chopin's Eighth Nocturne, which is my absolute favorite, and it just is. It's a connector for me because it is so romantic, and Chopin's my favorite romantic pianist, but. There is a lot of music, but it's not just classical. Obviously, you're in the 40s, so you're gonna know about Frank Sinatra a little bit. In the 60s, the Beatles, the Turtles, and that kind of fun repertoire of that era with more guitar focus. And then in the third part, like I mentioned, it's it's more classically oriented, and so this piece will help propel the person from, to help them kind of come back without giving you too much information. But If Music Be the Food of Love is actually obviously from Twelfth Night opening act, and I just really connected. I love Shakespeare. Yeah. It's my favorite. And so I actually had the pleasure of going to see that 12th Night performance at Shakespeare in the Park over the summer. It was just brilliant. But it's always been a chunk of that play that I've connected with, and just that small excerpt. But when I was at Millikan, the choral program there is just outstanding, and there's this choral piece called If Music Be the Food of Love, set to that text, loosely set to that text by Jean Barton, and it absolutely just propelled me. Well, if music is the food of love, play on, sing on, and obviously it becomes that in the book. So it does cover a lot of music. A lot of research went into that, and picking just the right pieces for each and every appearance of music in the book. So I actually, over the summer on my fan page, just went by each tune I found on YouTube, and I mentioned where it was in the book, and let people see that. So.
Very cool. That is very cool. So we have some standard questions that I love to throw out just to kind of ask them and see what you guys answer. But so let me ask this: which is harder, the first line or the last line? Does one give you more? We'll start with Fedora. You got a preference?
Oh, the first line, because the first line has to be great.
Okay, I do understand that. First line, last line.
The first line is what establishes my voice, and so once I have that, like I said before, everything's okay. The last line was the hardest because I had to leave the reader. Sometimes you have to leave the reader where they don't want to be, and that's a lot of pressure.
Okay.
And so, I'd say the last line.
Okay.
Last sentence, last line.
No, nothing wrong with that. I understand that. And then my other question then would be, who's your favorite literary character?
Huck Finn, who else?
Huck Finn, I like it. Okay.
Because he is not only apparently a real person, I mean, he's well drawn as a real person, but he is also such a sage. He has, he's 12 years old, but he has knowledge and inspiration and understanding well beyond his years, well beyond mine, no doubt. And
Yes.
he's simply delightful, and the story is delightful, and it's the great American novel.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Good answer. I like that one. So, Denise, favorite character in that thing?
It might be cheesy, but
No.
Elizabeth Bennet,
Okay.
Pride and Prejudice.
Mhm.
I adore her, just her connection to her dedication to her family. I'm very family oriented and would do anything for them, and even the stubbornness of being pursued by someone that she would never put in front of her just for the sake of her family. And I just think it just takes a lot to be that kind of woman with that much grace, but also that much just stick to your guns. And anyway, one of my favorite characters.
Excellent. I like it. Hey, nothing wrong. Good classic. So let me ask, do we have any questions from the internet?
We do. We actually have a comment and a question. From Jennifer. It says that this was very interesting when you were talking about, she said her grandmother has Alzheimer's, and so she's going to have to suggest trying the music, bringing the music.
Yes.
I would say the same about my mother as well.
Aww.
So, and then a question from Marilyn about who is your publisher for both of you and why, and would you do it differently next time?
Well, mine is Mayhaven Publishing Company. It is a small, traditional press out of Mahomet, Illinois. So it's regional, which works well, I think, with my particular topic since I'm a regional writer. And the way that I got the publisher was that I won the contest that they have. And first place is publication. It was also one that was won by Susan McBride, whom you probably know. And she has done very well. In fact, she's making a splendid living, and I always hoped to do that. And I still hope to do that, but it's not happening very fast.
Well, if I could just address Jennifer really quickly, and thank you for your comments. There are amazing connections with the Alzheimer's Association in the area, and they have literally hundreds of volunteers who will come and help you or talk with you on the phone. We have wonderful music therapists who are accessible all the time. But one of the biggest things that you can do for your grandmother is create a playlist of her favorite songs from her era, and keep that close at all times, whether it's an MP3 or an iPod or a CD. Just having that accessible, it's really important, and there are brilliant things that are being done with music therapy right now. My publisher is Tate Publishing out of Oklahoma. I got 2 referrals for Tate Publishing, and they have been so supportive of this effort of donating a portion of the proceeds to Alzheimer's. They're a family-owned and operated business, and they have been quite just helpful in everything that I've been doing, from the marketing standpoint to just letting me kind of pick all of my, help with the cover, help do everything. So I've been very hands-on with them, and it's been a great experience. So yes, I would publish with them again.
Excellent. Well, that's good to know. Any other questions from the online portion? All right, then I will jump to the audience here. Are there any questions that we have? You got a question you want to ask?
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you guys balance writing time with book blogging, publicity, and that sort? And I asked because you had mentioned these
Facebook?
Posting YouTube videos of songs that appear in your book. So.
Summer was a great time to release a book for me as a teacher. Obviously, I have 2 little kids at home too, and they're it's great to still have nap time in that regard. Everybody in my family has been extremely supportive. For my sisters coming over to help watch the kids in the summer, so I can pretty much curl up in the library and just type. So from the media perspective, you have to touch it a little bit every day. And it doesn't have to be a lot, but it has to be enough to keep things live and current and fresh and going. So I did a fan page on my own on Facebook. It's quite easy. I also did my own website, and then Tate actually created the commercial trailer for my video, and I believe this is one of your future questions, so I'm sorry she kind of stole it.
No.
So I did the triad basically of what they suggested. The trailer they did. Obviously, I'm not that savvy in creating that kind of computer software, but the Facebook page and the website were fairly simple processes. So my time for that is nighttime, and as I joked before we started, having a full-time job, 2 little kids at home, coming home at night, having to do all the other chores on the end of things. You learn to drink coffee. You learn to drink coffee and come in every morning and say, "Let me teach you. I'm ready." So it's a fun thing for me. My euphoria is my band room, and my playground is the writing, and it's quite a neat thing to be able to do that. So I think I answered your question. So.
Any other questions? You don't have any questions? Did you have more questions? Feel free, throw them out.
All right. So, Fedora, you had said that you primarily or only wrote nonfiction before.
That's right.
Yeah. I know someone in the guild who had also gone from the nonfiction only to fiction, and taken that step, and it was interesting the things he said that changed for him as far as when he was writing. Did you notice anything like that you had to change about your writing process, or that you had to think differently about to write fiction?
To a large extent, yes. We were just talking about using the MLA, the Modern Language Association style sheet, as opposed to Chicago, which does make a difference.
Big.
Yes, it makes a difference. So, but there's a great liberating factor here in that you don't have to research every single word and footnote anything that might at all be
anything
controversial, even.
Right.
Sometimes I was really dumb in those days too. I wrote a book for the National Federation of I can't remember the name, but they had asked me to write a book on mock trial, and so I wrote it. I did the best job that I thought I could possibly do. There are various difficulties in writing anything for other people, and now I get to write for myself.
Right.
I have a couple more questions. Yeah. What projects are you working on next?
I just finished, the Alzheimer's Association asked me to submit my short story, to a new publication of Chicken Soup for the Soul, Living with Alzheimer's and Other Dementias. So I've just gotten done submitting that, but my new project right now is actually, I had started writing the screenplay to go along with the book, but I had to put that temporarily on hold because I'll be presenting at our state music educators. So that's a massive undertaking, talking about composition and improvisation and music history projects in the classroom setting. So that's fun, but I will pick the screenplay back up. I vow to do that, hopefully in intermittent little bits and pieces when I don't want to focus on a PowerPoint.
And your future projects?
Well, what I'm working on now, the working title is Vanderbilt in Peoria.
Okay.
I was a regional writer. Well, I went to Peoria to research, and they were wonderful in Peoria, but there's a great building there, 1899, their city hall, a wonderful terracotta building. It's still there. It's gorgeous. So I took pictures of that and researched William K. Vanderbilt's trip to Peoria, Illinois. He came in his posh personal coach with 2 other coaches of entourage with him. He came to Peoria, stayed 1 hour, and told everybody he was not going to buy a Midwestern railroad. A month later, he owned several. So that is the starting point for this one.
All right, and you take that starting point and run with it. So
Yeah.
I like that.
And our other question is, if you could meet any author, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Oh, well, I think it's easy. I've already answered it. It would be Mark Twain, hands down.
be a good dinner.
You know, my two heroes, either Shakespeare or, I mean, either one, obviously.
That too would be an interesting dinner.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right
really.
person tea party and just
Make a banquet, we'd all come.
Yes.
That's right. That's right.
really want to see talk to one another.
All right. Any other questions from the online crew? Though you can feel free to ask afterwards if you want to.
Could you talk a little about? Yeah, try that again. Could you talk a little bit about your? You're talking about going into doing a screenplay, an adaptation of your own. What is your process? What are you finding in terms of looking at your story and breaking it down for the other medium?
There's a lot of highlighting going on right now. I'm quite verbose, so it's hard to find little snippets and combine them and make it concise enough so that the action depicts more than what you actually see on the page. And there's so much nonverbal that I see in my head, and making that part of it as well. So I've about got a fourth of it done, and then had to reach about a stopping point.